Hey everybody, Jay Weidner, Reality Check. Thanks for watching. Got a good show today with Richard Moore. He's a writer. He's written Remembering Zen, and his new book is Hidden, what is it? Hidden Tradition? Hidden
The
Teachings.
hidden teaching.
And he and I have been emailing each other for a while now and kind of share a lot of the same interests. He's uh, he's really interested in the Vedic knowledge and Vedic alchemy, and I am too. And we wanted to bring you a presentation that he has about the yugas and where we are in the yuga system. And I think that you'll find it quite interesting. So, how are you, Richard?
I'm great. I go by Sheldon, by the way, but my first name is Richard, but I actually go by Sheldon. So
So
you can call me Sheldon.
your writer's name is Richard, but you go by Sheldon.
My books say Sheldon as well,
Oh, they
but it's
do.
just my first name. It's
Okay.
my driver's license and stuff like that goes by
That's
Richard.
Sheldon, it is.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself before we go into this.
Okay. I guess you'd say an independent Buddhist and Vedic researcher. Most of my research has been around enlightenment and awakening. But when you start drilling into some of these ancient scriptures, you start seeing that we're missing big gaps in not only our teachings, but our calendars. We've lost our calendars. And if you really don't know where you're at in your own cycle, you might end up somewhere else. It's easy to manipulate people that way. And I think that's kind of went on in our past. It's kind of like how a lot of archaeologists are starting to look at these ancient megalithic sites, some of these weird wall structures all over the world. And it seems like we go back a lot further and we have a lot more knowledge than we think we do. And I think if I want to share with this Yuga cycle, it's an alternative Yuga cycle. And
Would you say
I think
alternative?
it's actually our correct one.
Yeah, so let's just do briefly touch on that. There's like uh, many misinterpretations of the Yuga cycles from the texts that have been uh, put down to us, and
Yeah.
the numbers are all screwy. I mean, they're
Yeah.
way off. Some are millions of years, and some are just smaller things. And and I've been through all of them. I think you probably have too, and
Yeah.
very confusing, actually, very confusing. And
Yeah.
then I discovered what I thought was the right system, and I started talking about it as I discovered it through my book work on the Cross of Henday, and um, then I found other people that were Vedic scholars who actually had come into more or less the same conclusion, and that's why I'm having you on. So let's get this rolling.
Okay. So were these ancient calendars mistranslated? And I think they were.
Yeah.
And so the one that I want to talk about is, and these ancient astronomers were monitoring extremely long cycles. Like for example, a kelp is 4.32 billion years. That's a very long time to be monitoring, and we really don't have civilizations that old on Earth. Like, the Australian Aboriginal probably is the oldest one, and they used to think it was 40,000. Now they're saying 80,000 years. So to be able to monitor these really long cycles, you have to be sort of recording this information, seeing how the yugas are changing, how things are changing, and recording it. So you have to be a very ancient society. And what I personally believe is this information probably came from somewhere else, and it's not earthbound. And then it kind of gets we kind of fudge it and add more zeros and put mythology around it, and then we end up losing it basically. Also, we just came through a dark age, and a dark age is a bad time, so you lose your information during dark ages as well. So we've had everything against us basically.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
So the traditional yuga cycle, so if there's almost probably a billion Indians will tell you a yuga is based on a Maha Yuga of 4.32 million years.
Yeah.
That's a very long time. Sorry, I got a dog barking here now. But in the Laws of Manu, which is another Vedic document, and the Laws of Manu is probably not as well known as the like the Mahabharata or the some of the Vishnu Puranas and things like that. But it's basically a very complete document, and it's basically talking about, it's the whole story of Adam and Noah. There was a flood. The Manu is the first guy who appeared on Earth, just like Adam, and he also built a. There was a flood in the past, and they got on this ark. Basically, the same story as Noah as well. So I think a lot of these other stories were drawn down from this original story, and they just ended up in different religions and different belief systems.
Completely
But
agree.
in the laws of Manu, the Yuga cycle is based on this 24,000 year cycle, which is a precession. And if you just listen to the word Manu, and then there's Anu, this is the Vedic influence from this ancient group that everybody knows as the Anunnaki. Manu, Anu. There's a definite correlation there.
Yeah.
And then Manu is actually a celestial king. Like if you look at the original descriptions of Manu, he is, and the book itself talks about that's why it calls the laws of Manu. It talks about how to be a righteous king. And they have these very long ruling periods. Like in one Kalpa, which is 4.32 billion years, we get 14 Manus. 14 man. So each one has a kind of like a ruling period of about 400 million or 320 million years. I don't think they live that long, but they're kind of like Baba G, a cosmic avatar. They can come in and out and actually appear in a world system as well. And apparently the lineage holder of Sri Yukteswar, which is Yogananda's lineage, he came out in about 2009 and said, this is a changing of the guard where the Kelki comes, the last avatar of Kelki comes, and a Manu comes, and a new kind of Kelki comes, or a new Buddha and a new Manu. And that happens. He was kind of saying 2012. I kind of think it's more closer to this time, but it doesn't mean it happens right away. It can take another 40, 100 years to fully manifest.
Right.
But I think we're at that zone now where, and I'll explain why I think that later on in the presentation. So these civilizations monitored these very long time periods. And in the laws of Manu, it's not just a binary star system that they talk about. There's a third star. And so there's the rise and fall of the Yuga cycle is based on these two binaries, but those two binaries also drift in and out towards a third star. And when we reach that point, it's called the Sita Brahman, or like a golden plus golden age, like a plus golden age. And I think that's where we made the mistake, where we have this 4.32 million year Mahayuga cycle. I think that's the actual second cycle between the third star that they talk about in the laws of Manu. And we got that mixed up, and we just kind of lost the whole binary one completely, almost like it's just wasn't there. And it's different than the stuff that came out of Sumeria. So the stuff that Zachariah Sitchin was looking at, he talked about a 3,600 year cycle, and our history doesn't fit that cycle. It's too short. Was one of the problems with it. And the other problem is it kind of comes out of the Babylonian system. And there was Sumar was basically in the region of Babylonia before Babylonia came in. And Babylonia, that empire became kind of dark. So I think there was, as we're going into our dark age, it became a dark place, and it became influenced by archons. And so I think we got misinformation, and that's probably when our calendar started getting truly hidden from us and things got mixed up. So I think that's where the mix-up came from. I don't really know, but I think that somewhere in our past that mix-up happened.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of mix-up in the Kali Yuga, so it's
Yeah.
yeah. All right.
So just see, we can't go to the next slide now.
And if you think about it, it's a perfect time for the Kalki avatar to arrive now. We're all hooked together, and every day we're more hooked together. So
yeah. So these past civilizations had a deeper understanding of these cycles, but also their influence on consciousness, because the Yuga cycle is what affects human consciousness. And they knew about this stuff, and they had great knowledge, and they had great teachings around it, and we kind of lost it all.
Mhm.
So, and we're also starting to, question all of these sites. Are the pyramids older than they say they are? And all these what weird walls. There's one in Montana now. That wall. If you looked at that, like,
Yeah.
why is that there? Like, we had an ice age in North America only 13,000 years ago. Did that survive the ice age? And was that kind of like a Tartarian outpost or something like
Looks
there's
like
just too many weird big walls around the planet as well, like
you're
that need
absolutely
further
right.
explanation.
Yep. Yeah, that wall in
So
Montana is very strange.
yeah, and then I determined that all these megaliths, some of them are precise calendars. The one in Omak, Alberta is actually a precise calendar. It's a 5,000 plus or minus 200-year calendar. And they all date back to our last Treta and our Satwa Yuga, right to, like, if you look at Göbekli Tepe, that goes right back to our last golden age.
Yeah.
And then the more cruder ones, as we go all the way down into where Stonehenge and all the ones in Tibet and Mongolia they found, they're all still 6,000 and 7,000 years old, these sites. And they're spiritual sites. They can accurately do the entire Vedic sidereal zodiac on every one of those sites perfectly. And they can predict eclipses and equinoxes with absolute accuracy. So it's
Oh yeah.
something more to that as well, right?
Well, I think that they knew that the Kali Yuga was coming, and they did these monuments to try to
Yeah,
preserve everything so that when we finally come out of the Kali Yuga, we have something to work off of. I really
yeah,
think, and
absolutely.
they're also older than that. I mean, but I think a lot of the ones that are more recent, like 3,000, 4,000 years old, are what I call them rush jobs. They're
Yeah,
done really quick because they knew the darkness was coming.
yeah, yeah. And the Nazca lines do the same function as these megalithic structures. They're
Yep.
tracking the Rahu and Ketu on the moon node. That's what they were doing with the Nazca lines for predicting eclipses. But they're more crude, way more crude than something like Göbekli Tepe is, because we were almost in the dark age when that was happening.
Got it.
So it was just quick here. They still work though. The amazing thing is all of these sites work with great accuracy, and we just kind of over the top of our head, like they built them. The main thing I find in the research is they built them so we knew when to plant our crops. It's just, it's like,
Pretty much
no,
made.
that's not why they built these sites.
So yeah, the Nazca lines are interesting because all the animals depicted are jungle animals. And we
Yeah,
know that 3,000 years ago, that was jungle.
yeah,
And they actually switches. It goes from the Amazon to the desert, then back to the Amazon, and now it's switching again.
yeah,
And and those lines will be gone when the rains return.
yeah,
Monkeys and the hummingbirds and all the stuff that isn't there right now will also return.
yeah. I
So
think they were also potentially star constellations, and they were
they
using
are.
their own animals to
Mhm.
represent those star constellations.
Yep.
So, and here's the problem I've always had when I first looked at the Maha Yuga. I had a problem because I've got the curse of logic. So the logic of the time of because everybody knows that Krishna and Rama were the same life stream, like they were the same incarnation, just different times. And back then they recorded the birth charts of people, where the stars were, where the planets were, with great accuracy, right?
Yep.
So technically, Krishna was 30, he passed in 3102 BC. And Rama was here in roughly 5115 BC. So
Yep.
there's roughly about a 2,000-year difference between the time that they lived on Earth. Yet, if you read scripture, when Rama was here, they said it was in Treta Yuga. And when Krishna was here, it was in Dwarpa Yuga. And depending on who you talk to, they think that we actually entered Kali Yuga on 3102 BC, which I don't believe we did. But Krishna departing was a pretty big event on the planet, right? So Dwarpa Yuga in this model, if you look, is 30 or 80, 864,000 years. It's impossible for them to be in Dwarpa unless we got unless Rama went back way, way a long time ago. But I don't think he went back 800,000 years ago. So I've always had a problem with this Yuga model. This one just didn't fit with me. And the other problem I have is with it is as you go through each Yuga, so you have a golden age, Satwa Yuga, you have a dark age, and then you have a bronze age, which is Dwarpa Yuga, and then you go into a silver age. Is you go right in this model, you go right from Kali Yuga into a golden age. It's just like smash the universe, the balance of the, it doesn't work that way. It's like this big spike in our time. It makes no sense, right?
It's an oscillation. And
yeah, it's like a sine wave, like you said, through the, like where you mentioned before we went online. Exactly. So I've always had a problem with this, and I knew it was wrong. I just intuitively knew it was wrong.
Yeah. It's too long.
Way too long.
Yeah.
So, and one of the books, if anybody is, it's called, this is Sri Yukteswar here.
Yeah.
And it's called the Holy Science. It's not a very big book, but there's some gems of knowledge.
Great book.
Oh, like this book is just like, and so I always wondered, most people don't know who Sri Yukteswar is. I'll just kind of give you, like, he's a modern kind of, I would say he's what we would call a Maharishi. This is one of like a Krishna type of person. And he lived only, his last incarnation, he passed in 1936. So he was a contemporary. And he was the chief guru of Yogananda. Now, everybody knows who Yogananda is.
Yep.
And he actually, I always thought Yogananda became enlightened through Kriya Yoga, because Kriya Yoga is a complete teaching, basically, that this guy was, Babaji gave Lahari Mahasaya the Kriya Yoga, and Lahari Mahasaya shared it with Sri Yukteswar. And this whole lineage is glowing face, like you see in some Tibetan lineages. All these, Amanda May was enlightened. His current lineage holder, Guru's Guru Nath Siddhartha or something like that. He's in India now. He's basically close to what I would call like an ascended master. This whole lineage is filled with enlightened and highly, highly spiritualized beings. And we kind of lost their teaching, but I always wondered, why do they spend so much time talking about this alternative Yuga model? Like they're like Yogananda and like they spent a lot of brain cycles. And I think the real reason is they were trying to prepare us for now. They were trying to tell us we're in this Sandis, in the Sandis period between the two Yugas. We're going to pop out one of these days and everything's going to start changing really quickly.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And that's why they spent so much time in this. And I think, it's worth to look at this again, everybody, because I really do believe that this model that he proposed is our true calendar, and we'll go back to it at some point. It might be another 40 years before, because science is always stubborn and we got all this sort of rigidity in the way we think. But I think eventually we're going to go back to this original calendar, and then we know where we're at again in our Yuga cycles.
Yep.
So
let's look at that.
Yeah. So he determined our almanacs were wrong, and we mistranslated to Kali Yuga. There's no way we have 400,000 years of the Dark Age left. Like, that's a pretty grim prospect, right? Like, and he said that it's based on an ascending arc and a descending arc. So it's a 24,000 year time period. And these arcs, so he's talking about the electric universe way back at the turn of the century. Like, they knew this, like, because electrics and magnetics affect consciousness. They really do. They affect our consciousness. And that's why they were so interested in having us understand that we're going basically into this new cycle of Dwarpa Yuga. And he calculated because he was a competent astronomer as well. He calculated in 1895 that we were in the Sandis period, and that's the buffer zone between yugas. They vary between 200 to 400 years. As you cross over, you have an overlap. So you kind of have still got the old, but because it's not just a sharp line that you fall off a cliff, sort of.
There's a gradual thing, and then the big problem, as I keep saying on the show here, is the problem is that you pop out of the Kali into the Dwarpa, but you've got this gigantic hangover. The only time in the cycle that you have a hangover when there's a change of from one yuga to another is right now, and we have PTSD from the yuga,
Yeah.
It's going to
And
take.
I kind of saw that a bit when, because like this guy is also, I don't want to like pump him because everybody always accuses me I'm part of this lineage. I'm not. I wished I would have found this lineage before I got into everything else because my path would have probably been an easier one. I found this afterwards, all of these teachings. But the incredible thing about him is, and why I believe him kind of over the Sitchin sort of stuff, that his model is correct is he's also one of the greatest Kriya Yoga masters to ever live. Like this guy's a true Maharishi.
Oh yeah.
And they say that he's actually the next Manu. So his next incarnation in the future, he actually becomes this next Manu. So like this is a pretty important lineage, like in terms of the sort of spiritual community of the world, really.
Yeah, they got learned the lessons from the I don't know who they are, the Anunnaki, I guess. They learned
Yeah, yeah. I think
secrets
this
and they
I
preserve.
think the reason I think it had to come from somewhere else is, like I said, we don't have the length of the time in the recorded history to be able to track something like even a 24,000 year binary, let alone a 4.32 million year. We don't have that time in our history. So in the laws of Manu, it says that when a binary reaches its furthest point away from each other, we're in a dark age. And that happened roughly at 500 AD. That's the darkest we were in. The height of our dark age was 500 AD. And dual mental virtue, which is basically overall human goodness, is at 25%. So
Yeah.
as we tick on into the Dwarpa Yuga now, it goes from 25 to 50%. That's a 50, like that's 100% increase. That's a major jump. Now, some of that change happened in the last 300 years of the buffer zone, this Sandus period between these yugas. So it slowly tick up, but at some point, we're going to hit a point where it's going to be kind of a significant change. And I don't think we're going to twinkle our way to
Right,
5D, or we're going to suddenly be ascended.
no, no,
I
no,
don't
no,
believe the
no.
5D ascension
Please,
thing.
please, please, please. No, that's not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is we're going to get smarter. That's what's going to
You would.
happen. As we rise up above the galactic plane, is what's going on is we're leaving the galactic plane and rising, which is what's going on right now. It has been going on for 100 years, 300 years. The sun changed in beginning about 2000. It was yellow and then it turned white and it's getting whiter. It's almost sometimes hard to even walk outside. It's so, especially here at
Yep.
8,000 feet. And and you're starting to see manifestations within the human mind. And AI
Yep.
is the latest iteration of all this. But I know a lot about the technology that's actually been developed and is about to come online and being given out for free online. And it's going to be free
Yep.
energy. It's going to be cars that can get you to Australia in 2 hours in the air without any pollution.
Yep.
We're on the edge of a manifestation that is going to be quite amazing.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, the problem I've always had with this theory too is it's based on a 24,000 year cycle. So these and binary stars, they have periods anywhere, it can be only a couple days to go to perihelion to aphelion, and some of them can go out hundreds of thousands of years, like, but they don't go out 4.32 million years. So that's why that original Yuga cycle is probably wrong.
Are you
But
saying
what
that this is Zacharias Sitchin's theory about this returning, I don't know, what is it, a planet or something? Is,
Yeah, Nibiru, yeah.
is that a mistranslation of this stuff?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I think the time period is wrong,
Yeah.
and um, I think that, well, they didn't even cover the Yuga cycles and how it affects consciousness, because this is a binary star that can go in perpetually forever. 100, there's a strong force between those two stars, and so as the stars get closer together again, we go towards a golden age, and we're at that point now.
Is
They're
this
moving
serious?
together.
Is this star serious?
That's an interesting one, because remember I said there's two motions. There's this binary motion, but then the binaries move. They don't necessarily go around another star, but they get close to another star. And so I looked out using logic again, kind of nine light years out every. So like we got Alpha Centauri, Primus Centauri,
Serious.
um, and Sirius is only 8.6, but it's the brightest one. Alpha Centauri is a red, or Prima Centauri is a red, um, a red dwarf, and it
Yep.
doesn't even emit visible light. It's very small. So it would have to be, it would probably be the strongest star closest to us, which would, and that's when you get not only a golden age, when we're close to that in a golden age, we get a golden age plus plus, like that's the seat of, so we actually eventually reach a very high seat of Brahman at some point in these cycles. We've lost that one. I don't know how to ever catch up where we'll figure out where we're at in that third motion. The binary one is pretty easy to figure out where we're at, but the third motion is, we lost that in the Dark Age as well. But I think we'll figure it out again. I really do.
So is it Sirius? Is the binary one Sirius?
I don't think so. No, I think Sirius is that third star that our binary goes towards. I think our binary is either a red dwarf or a brown dwarf. Red dwarfs are more common, and they're actually
Oh, and you
burning
can't see 'em.
hydrogen,
Yeah.
whereas a brown dwarf is just dead. So
You wouldn't be able to see it.
you wouldn't be able to see it. Yeah.
All right. So um, that brings up something that is a real puzzle to me, and that is that we know from ancient Egyptian writings that Sirius, the helical rising of Sirius was around July 23rd. It was when the Nile flooded, and Sirius and the sun would be rising together in the east. And so, I go outside late at night around August 20th right now. Okay. So if it was 5,000 years ago, these writings, then Sirius is going to be whatever, 5,000 years further that way. Okay. As the precession, right? But it's not. It's actually quite close to July 23rd. It's helical rising, just like the ancient Egyptian text said. And that puzzles me. And I brought this up to Robert Temple and other people because it's very puzzling as to why Sirius is not further away from where it is. It's pretty much rising around
I think
time.
When I did the research, I looked at only 9 years light years out, which is not that far, right? And I looked at stars that were coming towards our sun, and the motion of Vega, which is 80 light years out, is coming towards our sun, and Sirius is is actually moving towards our sun in that model. So that's why I think that this second motion, where we reach a seat of Brahman every 4.32 million years, I think that's Sirius. I think our twin is not Sirius. A lot of people say that, and I don't know for certain, but I think it's this planet not X or planet 9 that they're starting to be able to measure. I think that is actually our true binary. And whether there's a planet around it with life, then it would probably have to be a red dwarf. But we can see Alpha Proxima with telescopes, and that's 4.2 light years away. So how come we haven't found our own? So it's very likely it could be a brown dwarf too. So but we have this entire history about this, right? Like, this is not Hindu science fiction. Like, these are really old documents, and we have a pretty good description of this stuff, right?
Yep.
So we get these two electric arcs, and have you ever noticed a lot of these people who are looking at cataclysmic events in our past, they always hit these 12,000 year cycle marks, right?
Yeah.
And it's because when the two stars come together at perihelion, that's kind of a rough time. It doesn't destroy the whole solar system, but you're going to have pole shifts, you're going to have earthquakes, floods, where poles literally, and I think that's why the poles actually shifted 13,500 years ago was the last time we were in perihelion. And what happened 13,500 years ago? We had an ice age, and it melted quicker than they now believe it melted way quicker than they thought. And that's why you get these big scars across North America, because that ice age, that mile high ice melted fairly quick. And fall of Atlantis, that's when they buried Göbekli Tepe. Why did they bury Göbekli Tepe? Very carefully. It wasn't just like they didn't get a backhoe in there. It was like,
talk about a lot of work.
Buried. because they knew the duel was coming in and things were going to get shaken up. It's at the height of a golden age, though. It's best to have it happen there than at the height of a dark age.
Wait a minute.
And
The cataclysm
so,
came at the height of the golden age.
yeah, yeah, it was the very top of our golden age. Yeah.
Very interesting. And
And-
I see, that acts as a catalyst to begin the downward spiral.
yeah.
I see.
And it's another thing that happens is the two stars are the closest together. And if consciousness is truly affected by magnetics and electrics as well, not just mental formations, but the actual what the universe is doing,
It is.
It's at the highest point when they're closest. So we get the most star power. When our two stars are closest together, we have our best time. That's the golden age is quite a long time. It's 9,000 years from the start to the end of the golden age. And this is the model you always show it because it's the right one. I really believe this is the right model because it has the balance. You don't just go right in from a dark age. You go down. Every day gets worse. Right about here, when we entered our dark age, was when things started getting really dark and we had all these wars. And then you have a 2,000-year dark age. And so you asked me, where are we right now? We're right here. We're right at that junction where we leave the Sandus period and we're fully on into Dwapara Yuga. And there's a major shift, and it's positive. Right. And
that's what all the conflict is going on Earth right now.
Exactly.
Between the people that are already in the Dwapara Yuga and the ones that are still stuck in the Kali Yuga, and the ones still stuck in the Kali Yuga have decided they're not going to let go of their power, and no matter what, and they're losing their grip every day, and you can just feel it. And information, as Terence McKenna used to say, information is loose on the planet.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, when I first brought this out in 2009, so you can imagine telling people publicly, we got 2012 wrong. It's really going to be around 2024. Like, people just, no way, and so I just kind of pulled back and thought, well, at least I'm on video saying it, right? So at least I said it because I believe so much in this man. Like, Sri Yukteswar was a genius. Right. So, but what I said is, well, I believe personally by about 2020, the people who control this world and these elite ancient society, they know this as well. They know these cycles. They know this is our true calendar. Yeah. What you'll start seeing is probably 2020, things will start going crazy. What happened in 2020? Things started going crazy. And I believe the reason why is they know that there's going to be a jump in consciousness. So what do you do if you're a controlling entity and you know that the people you're controlling are going to suddenly jump up you're going to take away more freedom of speech. You want more control of the internet. You're going to want to have more autocratic type governments. You're going to want to have all these agendas because you need more control.
More important, you want to confuse everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
What did William Casey say, the head of the CIA? When everything that everybody believes is bullshit, we will have succeeded.
Yeah.
Think about that. Just think about
it. Yeah.
And
that's why I'm kind of hard on the New Age community as well, because like, I heard so many, like, I remember when I first started talking about this hidden teaching, because there's a whole hidden teaching that we can't even get into today behind this. And people are going, we don't need the Galactic Federation of Light. This is 2009. They're going to come with light beds, and you're just going to lay down and push one, and you're going to be enlightened. And some people think that there's going to be a big flash or an event that we're going to suddenly be in 5D, and we're going to have no, you still have to do the work. Yeah. But when you go into Dwapara Yuga, that energy jump, it's basically going to be twice as easy to become enlightened as well. Like, there's a spiritual opportunity we're missing out right now with all this BS and fluff, and we're missing it, right? Like, we're just missing the real opportunity here because of some of it's grifting, but I think a lot of it's by design. We're being misled all the time. Like,
it's both. There's really dark people involved in it trying to make money, and then there's agents of chaos, I call them, that are everywhere, spreading everything. Who's the guy? Maharashi. He had the place in Iowa, right? And I knew a guy that was attending his place in Iowa, and Maharashi would say, oh no, the first people the CIA wants to destroy are people like me. And he was convinced that because you want to get the spiritual guys first, because they have
Yeah.
they're very dangerous because they can pass on the knowledge to people that, artists and scientists and things that can't have that
Yeah.
happen. But anyway, that time has passed, because I do believe we are right where you are saying we are.
Yeah. Yeah. So do I. And back to that 24,000 with the 3 zeros. I knew that the 3 zeros, that always troubled me too. So we got these ancients kind of gave us very close. Like it's within probably 40 to 80 years. It might be 24,000. And so I looked at our history, and because we don't have a very good history going back 13,500 years. We got Göbekli, we got the fall of it. We got all those things happening around, cataclysms happen around that. But at exactly at 536, if you think about they've come into perihelion, you've had your go, and they go all the way out to 500 AD. They're the furthest point, 2 star systems, and all of a sudden they go in the other way. There's got to be like a pull or something that it's not as cataclysmic as a perihelion, but something happens. And guess what? In 536, we had a dark winter where there was chaos everywhere. There was no sun, crops didn't grow, people starved for like 2 or 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
So I think the actual number at the bottom is 536. So you can't use a supercomputer to properly look at this precession like we thought we did with the wrong precession. And because they tend to speed up a bit when they come into perihelion. So the speed isn't always constant. So I think it's close to 24,000, but in some change is my guess. And I think it's 2424 is the
and I think people are going to say, oh no, the precession is 25,920. And but what I think they don't really understand is there's a lot of slop in that precessional cycle that they're talking about. I mean, constellations are not equal. That's why you have sidereal astrology. You can't use the other astrology, and I don't. And my astrology is much more precise. But so yeah, this is really interesting. And again, this is pretty much what the Cross of Hende is saying. It's saying 12,000 years ago there was a solar flare or something. There was actually 2 events. It was a double catastrophe that threw us into this whole thing. It was either a galactic wave, which could be. There's enough evidence to show that the galaxy burps every 12,000 years, and these waves roll across the plane of the galaxy and hit us. Everybody gets hit by it. And then, or it could be, an asteroid hit or a comet hit. That started the Younger Dryas. And then Robert Schoch of Boston University shows and proves, in my point of view, that what ended the Younger Dryas was a solar flare. And that does appear to be what the Cross of Hende is saying. It's conveying the exact
and you would get those type of events when they're when 2 suns come close together. They're just charged plasma balls, right? So you'd get flares going across. You would get meteors, so you'd get these, meteor type cataclysms that were happening. You'd get it all. Like it wouldn't be a good time for quite a while. It'd take a long time to recover after because you get like a partial pole shift and.
Oh yeah, you get plasma storms, which is likely what created a lot of the American Southwest, the weird rock formations and stuff. Look like gigantic lightning strikes. The American Southwest Indians have petroglyphs with plasma inscriptions in them, as if they remember something and they're trying to get it down under the rocks. People in the future would see what was going on. So yeah, it was a hell of a time.
Some of those big arcs, looks like somebody took a giant welding torch across Mars. That was probably plasma discharge when this guy, during our last perihelion as well.
Absolutely. That's exactly what it looks like.
So this is what I said in my first book. My belief is, because I'm a kind of a weird Buddhist. I still believe in a creator. I believe like when you talk about the Buddhist void or the Taoist Tao, the oneness, that is this pulsating light of all. It's not this God, white bearded God ruling over us. I believe that there's a central power. So I believe that binary star systems are perpetual motion machines designed for the evolution of all consciousness. So, because when I looked out that 9 light years just within our solar system, or past our solar system, four of them are binaries. Alpha Centauri is a binary. It's actually a binary, plus it's got the prime that goes around every 500,000 years. Sirius is a binary. Half of the, like, there's
aren't they? I think they're starting to realize that maybe all stars are binary.
not all of them, but they figure about 85% now in the
Ah,
whole multiverse. Like, that's in every galaxy. Like, that's mind-boggling, right? Like,
makes
they're
sense.
out there.
It's a
And
dualistic universe, so why not?
everybody's seen this sign. This is the true, if you can kind of try to imagine these two going in a binary position, you see the dark getting stretched out in a golden age and come more dark in a dark age.
Mhm.
That's why this model works right. If this had the traditional Maha Yuga, and
Yep.
you went right from a dark age into it wouldn't look like this. The balance is gone. The universe doesn't work that way. This is why this model is correct, I think. And this symbol is actually really represents that dance of the binary. That's
Yep.
really what that symbol is. I'm certain of it.
Yep.
I didn't read that in the scripture. I'm just making that one up, but I'm pretty sure it's what it is.
Well,
And then we have these Caltech researchers, and this is like they said that they found them there was about 5 objects past the Kuiper belt that were all pointing in the same direction as space. So they knew something was influencing for that drift to occur, right?
yep.
So that's where they came up with this planet 9, and they said it's 10 times the mass of Earth. They probably got that wrong. It's probably 20 or 40 times the mass of Earth. And then it has an elliptical orbit. So it's not a planet. Planets don't have elliptical orbits like that. So why do we have this? And it's got a 10 to 20,000 year orbit. What happens if it has a 24,036 year orbit, right? I think that whatever they're looking at right now, they know where they need to look for this brown dwarf or red dwarf. They're going to find it at some point. But I think this is just more confirmation that we are in a binary system, and all the ones around us are binary. So, like, people who, a lot of times when I do this, they go like, "You idiot, we're not in a binary." Like, it's like, how do you know? And like, look around you, they're everywhere around you. Like, this is not a stretch, really. And why do we have this in our ancient documents? Like, why? These are like, go back thousands of years.
Well, something's causing the sun to move from yellow to white.
Yeah.
So, well,
And that's coming out of the Sandus period. Like,
yeah.
we went into that Sandus period roughly 1700 AD.
Yeah.
And that's right when religion started having less control. We started having guys like Voltaire show up, bigger
Yeah,
thinkers.
printing press and
Yeah.
Renaissance, not the Renaissance, the scientific revival,
Yeah.
Galileo, alchemy was actually being considered as a science
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
first time. So yeah, it was a really revolutionary time. You can just feel, if you know history, you can just see how things started really shifting around that time period.
Yeah. Yeah. So I tried to draw these two arcs. So we have our brown dwarf or our red dwarf down at the bottom and our sun at the top here. And the interesting thing is right at last perihelion, which was 11,500 BC, roughly 13,500 years ago, we had this place called Atlantis fall, probably because when it shifts its pole, continents literally could sink in places. Like, you can't really predict where a safe spot is when you have a partial pole shift. It's like every place is going to be bad, but some places are going to be a lot worse than other places. And
I don't know if it's a pole shift. It could just be the planet moves a little bit.
yeah, it's not a pole shift. I believe it's just a slight shift where you might go, 20 degrees or 18 degrees or something like that.
That's why they have maps of Antarctica. The period map shows you our Antarctica without ice.
Yeah.
Antarctica got thrust into the icy part.
Yeah. And why you have mastodons with food still in their mouth and they're frozen on the spot because it shifts, right? And it happens quite quickly, but I think it's different every time, because every time you have a perihelion, the sun or the earth can be in a different. So sometimes it's probably quite mild, and other times it's probably quite horrific. It would vary where the earth is in relation to the sun each time too. So
you definitely remember it if you were in it.
yeah. And I think the universe is designed not to destroy. There's all these binaries throughout the universe, and I think they're not designed to destroy life. They're there to aid in evolution of consciousness, I believe.
Yeah. I believe that too.
Yeah. So right at the top of this is right when Göbekli Tepe was buried. So
Yep.
we have this megalithic structure that can predict eclipses, equinoxes, all these other things.
Yep.
And it was buried, carefully buried. Why? Because they knew that this sun was coming in and there was going to be a destruction, and they had to preserve, they were preserving that site. I'm certain
I
that
agree.
Göbekli Tepe was buried.
Yep.
And then, so then we go on a descending arc. So we start descending, and Atlantis falls. I believe the remnants of Atlantis probably went to places like Egypt and all these other places, these weird walls, whatever that group was, they were still in a golden age, and they were still sharing these higher teachings. And if you look at Göbekli Tepe, the rocks are very smooth carved. It's perfectly carved. It works different than Stonehenge, but it does the same function. So it's like a more advanced version of Stonehenge.
And
And
this is
then
when
as we,
this would be the time period when the guys with beards in boats were going
yeah,
around the world teaching people how to farm
yeah,
and treat women with respect, and there were like all
yeah,
these rules that they had. So
yeah,
they're reinvigorating the golden age.
yeah. And then, so then we're on the descending arc. So every day things get kind of worse on your descending arc. You're descending into a dark age. And right around 5000 BC, I've mapped it here, the timer Rama, he was in Treta Yuga. Look at, he's in Treta, he's in the right Yuga in this model. And
Yes,
then
sir.
as we go down into where Krishna, which was 3102 BC, he's in Dwarpa Yuga. The model actually works. That was one of my major checkpoints in this whole theory is Krishna and Rama sit in the right yugas in this model. They don't in a
Yeah.
Maha Yuga,
No, this is
and they do in
exactly
this
right.
model.
This is exactly
And
right.
yeah, and then a lot of these megalithic sites that they found, like in Stonehenge, and
Yep.
Stonehenge is they thought was 2,000 years. I think it's probably more of a 4,000 year site. These ones they find in Armenia, they're all between 6 and 8,000 years old. So those sites were built still when we were in our silver in Treta Yuga, some of them in our golden age, and they were made out of solid rock, so they would last the test of time. And I think these ancients wanted us to find them again and
Yep.
figure out what they really were for.
So the downside of this one on the right side here is um, the human race frantically trying to salvage everything that they had gained in the previous golden age,
Yeah,
and creating monuments of memory, calendars, anything
yeah,
that they can to keep the knowledge intact because of the coming darkness.
yeah, exactly.
And they all know this, so they know exactly what time they are in.
Yeah, absolutely. They know this. Like, I would love to get some of these books. Like, yeah, there's a lot more. A lot of things have been hidden, but we're figuring this out. Like, this is being figured out as we speak right now. Like, they're not gonna hide this for very much longer. Like,
Yeah,
I don't think their goals are gonna work. I think the change is gonna happen so fast that they're just, and I see it happening in my own country. Like,
too.
2020 got kind of crazy here, and we got some really crazy government. Like, it's getting bad here too.
That's
But
the hangover. That's the
people are waking up though. Yeah, like,
that's the clutching keeping the clutching of power,
yeah,
and they know that it's slipping, and they're confused as to why it's slipping. They don't quite understand it, and
yeah,
this is exactly why. So the Buddha, if you can see here, the Buddha was born right near the start of the Kali Yuga. That's why. So what was the teaching of the Buddha? The teaching of the Buddha was, ain't nothing you can do about it, baby. You are in the Kali Yuga. All you can
yeah,
really do is go sit over by that tree and shut up. Which is
yeah.
basically what he said, because there's nothing you can do about the darkness that has now descended upon us.
And there's another thing is that when you eventually get a chance to read my book, Buddha had another teaching that he gave to the first Kalki king of Shambhala, Sachandra,
Yeah.
and he didn't give this teaching openly to the Sangha or the average person. And everybody knows Shambhala became an enlightened society. So there's a hidden teaching in all of this too. This is why I called my book the hidden. There's a hidden teaching. Not only did we lose our calendars, And I think Buddha didn't openly share it at that point because he knew we were going into the Dark Age. It's like Padmasambhava was over on this side of the Dark Age.
That's right.
He wrote the book, the Tibetan book of the living and
Yeah.
Yeshe Tsogyal translated
And
it, and she
that's
hid
right.
it for 700 years because he knew that the Dark Ones could use that information and potentially wait till we're out of the Dark Age. And
That's right.
guess what? We're coming out of the Dark Age. All of this stuff's
That's right.
coming.
And all of Baba's teachings are going to become clearly obvious as we come
Yeah.
into this age. Or we're going to realize that we have the ability to create light body through our pineal gland,
Yeah.
just like he did. But he's right. He had to hide it. It was too
Yeah.
dangerous. I mean, everybody was after all this information, and they were not after it for good reasons.
And I'll show you another thing that was interesting. As we came down, we had histories of giants in these times. Like even at King David was right just before we entered the Dark Age was a
Yep.
time King David and Moses was roughly 1400 BC. So as we're in just before we entered the Dark Age, we don't see giants anymore.
Yep.
The Tibetans have, in the Himalayas, they sometimes say they see one, but it's very rare. Like this group of giants just disappeared. So I don't know if there was actually a kind of a highly evolved group of the Anunnaki. It wasn't just this dark controlling part, because the Laws of Manu is a very enlightened document. And so I think there was, as we got into the Dark Age, even those groups might have been the darkness overcame them, the archons, because I think we have archons in here and maybe a little bit here.
That's right.
I don't think we have archons in our golden age.
No,
I don't think
no.
they can literally exist here. Like
No,
they're
they
gone.
can't. The gravity, the spiritual gravity is too much for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting about that. So yeah, and so you say that 538 AD is like what, smack in the middle of it, of the
Well,
college?
500 AD was the bottom according to Shri Yukteswar's model.
Yeah.
I just amped that up to 536 because I
In
thought,
the
well,
year with
it's
no
not
summer.
these three zeros, and that's when we had that catastrophe basically at aphelion, because the planets or the whole solar system's changed direction, right? There's going to be
Oh
some
yeah,
kind of
that's also when we began losing our history. Uh,
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
really know really what happened after 538 or 536, really all the way up until really Pope Sylvester, like around
yeah,
1000 AD. There's like this huge gap of, well, what happened here? They say, oh, it was the Dark
yeah,
Ages. You're like, there's no advancements in any technology, none in
yeah.
that time period.
And the other interesting thing is right at 500 AD is roughly the fall of the Roman Empire. It
That's
really
right.
didn't fall, it just went into hiding and everything. It became more secretive. So right at our lowest point, the main empire on the planet
Yeah.
started crumbling, and
And the
but it
old
started
order,
getting more
the,
secret.
whole- the entire order of that time
Yeah.
disappeared. I mean, it completely disappeared. I mean,
And
there,
if you look on this side of our Dark Age, this is when all those Persian wars, all those horrible Chinese wars were fought. And when we get on this side, it's when all the European Dark Age and the torturing and even the Mayans, every group on this planet, I believe, fell down during the Dark Age. There was,
yeah,
there's always goodness because you have that 25% dual mental virtue. But for the most part, most of us kind of are dirtbags during the bottom of the Dark Age, right? Like, look at
yeah.
our history. Our
What we're
history,
saying is that when we're at the very bottom of this thing, your average human is like 25% good, 75% corrupt. And as
yeah,
we move towards up, that gets less. So right now we're less corrupt than we were 500 years ago or 1500
oh,
years.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I believe, like, because this is the hard part to figure out where we're at in this Sandus period, because this is that buffer zone, and it's 300 years in this Yuga. So roughly, if we left at 1700, add 1700 plus 2000. So we're getting, and some people, I thought originally it might have been 2012, but I knew. I'll explain why I think it's 2024, or like right now. And based on what's happening in the external world, I think it's pretty obvious that that's where we're at, right?
Think so. Think
So
so.
at some point, I think that when we cross this, that might be actually when we fully go into this age of Aquarius. So this Western calendar system can kind of sync up with this one. That's what Shri Yukteswar was trying to do with this model.
Yep.
And I think what'll happen is probably this year and next year. I believe that the total lunar eclipse next March is kind of the completion of all of these astral theological events that have been going on in the last 10 years. And like you said, the sun changing over the last 20 years. We're in the zone and we're going to pop out any day. I don't know exactly what that day is, but when we pop out, the shift is it's going to change fast. Like everything, like you're going to see the old systems
It's going to be
crumble.
just like recovering from a hangover.
Yeah.
It'll be cloudy. It's all cloudy. You can't think straight. And then as time passes, it all separates and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you go, "Whoa, am I glad that's over with?"
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to work. And we're not out of it yet. I can still feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're exactly right. We're not out,
Yeah,
but we're close. We're getting
we're
close. I
close.
feel that we're getting close.
I do too. I can just feel my own intuitive ability to
Yeah.
perceive is happening. And I think that one of the keys is they powers that be loses their ability to BS us,
Yeah.
and I think that's what's going on. I mean, I'm actually kind of astounded. I mean, I've been at this for like 35 years, and only in the last, and probably because of 2020, has the conversation ramped up to the point where authority might as well just quit because nobody
Yeah.
believes it anymore.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, because it's
And
Kali
I
Yuga.
told you earlier, I see that in Canada. People who used to be, we call programmed sheep, they're waking up now. They're going, I don't believe this government. I don't believe this anymore. Like people are waking up.
They are. There's no
It's
doubt
going to
about it.
be, and it's soon. It's really it's not going to work. Like I was careful to share this because you get
Jaw-dropping.
the new agers get in there and they go, there's going to be a solar flash and we're all going to be 5D and we're going to be twinkling. If you're 50% light, you're going to be, that's not how this ever happened. It's
That's
slow. It's
Wilcock crap.
yeah. Yeah.
The guys muddy up the water so bad, but
Yeah.
even they are not being believed anymore. So,
Well, that's part of this shift is
yeah.
I think all of the BS and ufology, all the BF in the new age, it all comes to light. People are starting to remember, well, you said something different 10, 20 years ago. Why you say that? Like, and it's just not, they're not going to, they should stop. All of them should stop because this is a true spiritual time to everybody to truly awake and figure out where we're at in our calendars. Make enlightenment your life goal, not so much monetary material things. Like we're in the good zone. Like
I say this quite often, if you can get through the next 10 years, then you'll probably live for a couple hundred years more because that's
potentially,
the
yeah.
chances that are going on right now are absolutely astonishing. We're
Yeah.
discovering a whole new physics, like you say, the electric universe. I call it the plasma universe. We're discovering that there's living creatures in our skies that are made out of plasma, and they
Yeah.
can produce, and they're intelligent, and things that were just like not understood not that long ago. All of a sudden, science is
Yeah.
accepting it, and this is then what you're going to see here, folks, is that our ideas are going to progress, and they're going to start progressing rapidly. And it's going to be the spiritual people, the mystics are going to be the first people to have these new ideas. And then in rapid succession, the artists are going to pick up on it, and then the scientists are going to pick up on it, and then it's going to come into reality. And that's going to go in these rapid succession things, and it's going to be one idea after another as we advance forward into what the real ascension is, which is going up the wheel of this cycle.
Yeah.
That's why the New Agers are misinterpreting this information. Yes,
Yeah.
we're ascending, but we're ascending up the Yuga cycle, completely different. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not going to be 5D or any of that.
Yeah. I think potentially when we get into golden ages, like you hear about Noah lived a lot. I think that the energy is such that we might live longer. Like our physical bodies might not just through technology, but actual
Oh,
just
no. Yeah, they
We're
will.
in a higher spot, right?
They will. They will. No, that's exactly what's going to happen. First off, the
Yeah.
soil gains back all of its nutrition. It's this whole alchemy thing that we don't understand. It's has to do with the dynamics between the plasma universe and the surface of the earth and how that begins changing. And that's why there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to be very comfortable with what's about to happen because
Yeah.
the electrodynamics are going to shift and um, it could even get to the point where, you can walk around naked in freezing weather, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so I don't know. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, so am I. And I think this point here is actually what the Gnostics called the omega point.
Hmm.
Because you could have an omega point up here when you go from, but I think it happened. The biggest jump is now,
Yeah,
and I think I think that we're hitting the omega point or the age of Aquarius. I think they're all the same thing. Like
they're
they're
all the same thing. And
yeah,
you're all right. It is the omega point. And this is where the very, our consciousness becomes so altered that
yeah,
we're Well, we're going to be really embarrassed by our past, and we shouldn't be because we were in a different time period.
yeah,
And so, but we are, and we're going to have to come to grips with that. But all the stuff that's going on with wokeness and everything, that's part of this dynamic here.
yeah.
It's,
Oh,
it's
for sure it is. Yeah,
yeah, it's part of us trying to come to grips with what has happened before and how we don't want to do that anymore. And
yeah,
also, you can see that our relationship with war has recently just really changed. We
yeah,
really don't want war anymore. And you can just feel everybody's like, no, 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 no. And the people that are perpetuating war are not, they're looked on badly, frankly.
yeah.
So, there has been a shift in a number of ways, and that's just going to get more and more dramatic. But you're right. The biggest shift in this whole cycle is right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the most important one because the if we go from 25 to 50, I believe because the sun is and the moon and all everything is affected, enlightenment is going to be not twice as easy, but we're entering the best time for rapid enlightenment for people. Like we're at that point too, and that's why you don't want this new age spiritual fluff muddy in those waters. You need real teachings again, and they're all in our past. Like the not only were the calendars hidden, the teachings were hidden. Like, it's so all these avatars who ever came to teach us how to get out of this cyclic existence, stop reincarnating so much and move on. But you have to attain enlightenment to get to that point. And always thought, how they always show these halos over all these different show representing an enlightened person. You also see this in Egyptian art where they have that round, like you ever see with Thoth above with the ball.
Yeah.
That's the crown chakra. The crown chakra is like the Tibetans believe when you become enlightened, you actually go to a different dimension. Even though an enlightened person can still operate in 3D, they have that cosmic bigger that's all. It's nothing special. It doesn't make you better.
You will have a visible aura in the coming yugas.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Literally,
Yeah.
everyone will be glowing, and the
We'll
light.
see that again for
Yes,
sure.
you
Yeah.
will. Your little pineal. The sun changing color goes through your eyes and affects the pineal gland. That's what's going on. That's the
Yeah.
actual physical thing that's going on. Is the sun
Yeah.
changing you in the pineal gland. So what do they tell you to do? Stay inside. Don't go out in the sun.
Yeah.
Everything that
And
you should do, they're telling you not to do.
and we'll do this on another, maybe if you ever have me on for another show, I'll
I
discuss
will.
about these hidden teachings and how they hid this stuff. But you see this staff that he's holding and he's got the ankh in his hand there?
Yep.
Everybody knows that the Tibetans have these singing bowls that resonate at different frequencies to help open whatever chakra that you're stuck on. Well, if you ever get a tuning fork and whack it on a table and touch your lips, it goes right down your central nervous system through your chakra system.
Right.
This ankh is like a tuning fork, and you see them often touching just an ankh to their lips, but you also see them. This thing is right at the lip level. I think they were also tapping the ankh, and they were. It was like a opening up chakras. That's what they were doing with this. Like this ancient teaching I talked about goes all the way back to the Egyptians. It goes back to stuff, ancient Vedic stuff. Like this, we knew all of this stuff a long time ago, and it was hidden in our art. Like it's hidden in the art of Horus, and it's hidden in the art of the Bhava Chakra, which is a drawing that the whole teaching, we missed half of it though. So like that would take another 2 podcasts to cover that. But
Yeah,
they hid the teachings, they just didn't hide the calendars.
there you go. That's it right there.
Yeah. So thumb pin and creation. It doesn't matter how infinitely small you go or infinitely large you go. That's the mathematic principles are there.
The
You know,
plasma
like
universe.
it's just there. It's like, and that's why I believe binaries are perpetual motion machines for evolution. Everything in the universe is designed to increase consciousness. It's
Well, yeah, here we go. The superclusters. Yeah.
yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how this shapes consciousness, because a lot of people, you can tell them 25% to 50%. They don't really understand because a lot of people think consciousness is in your brain, and it's not. Because and I know this for a fact because I have actually had a real where I flatlined and they barely got me back to life. And I went on a trip. I left my body,
Yeah.
and my brain wasn't with me, but my consciousness, it was more connected, but it was still there. I was like, I left my body and my brain, but my consciousness was still intact. And it was, when you die, it's like your life stream. It goes on. You don't want to really make a separate self out of it, but you, the consciousness is in your soul. It's soul. The brain, it just uploads to the brain to use it like a computer. It's just like a microprocessor, but the consciousness itself is in the soul. It's plasma. It's plasma based. It's a ball of light inside your body.
Yep. When you
And
die, that ball of light shrinks down to your spinal column, and then it goes up, and it comes out the top through the sushumna,
yeah,
and
yeah,
which is a
absolutely.
filament, a plasma filament, the 100th size of the width of a hair, and then you travel. That's the tunnel that you see. You're traveling
Yeah.
through the plasma filament back up into the plasma cloud. That is really where consciousness resides.
That's interesting that you know that because in ancient Tibet they used to drill a hole in the back of the head after a lama died to kind of help
Help it go.
let the consciousness leave even easier. It was yeah.
Yep.
Not very many people know that one. It's good. Um, so you want to know how the universe affects consciousness, how do all these stars, how the position of these planets, because astrology and astronomy, I think, eventually become one again.
They do.
Like like 'cause a lot of people think
Absolutely.
astrology is like a pseudoscience. It's probably more scientific than astronomy is if you really look at it
Absolutely.
with enlightened eyes
Yep.
or the wisdom mind. And so, how does that whole universe, because like for example, Alcyon is 400 light years away, so that's not our central sun that where this third thing is, third motion of the binaries is causing the sort of super golden age. But um all of those bodies of light affect us, and how does that happen? And quantum entanglement, like out of all of the 4 branches of quantum theory, quantum entanglement really helps explain the concept of oneness in Buddhism or
Yep.
the Tao in Taoism. And you can have 2 particles that can form a quantum state together, and they can literally be on the other side of a galaxy from each other. And if something changes over here, instantly changes over there. So the speed of light doesn't count anymore. It's an instantaneous. That's something about light that we don't understand yet,
Oh, they're
really, but
connected by they're connected by plasma filament.
exactly. It's
Yep.
all about the light. Everything's about the light, but
Everything's
it's
about the light.
instantaneous.
It's
So that's
instantaneous.
how
Yeah.
all of these things can affect us instantaneously because it doesn't matter where these particles are.
That's right.
So in our galaxy, for example, all our local stars and stuff, they've made quantum entanglements.
They
Like
are quantumly
it's all
entangled.
these. Um, so Buddha's description of dependent origination, which we're linked to everything. We're linked to the stars. You're linked to your ancestors, the food you eat, the water you drink. That's really that's quantum, like that's an expanded version of quantum entanglement, right?
Yep.
And even karma itself is a form, because people always say, well, how does this karma even work? Well, if you do good deeds, um, or bad deeds, that those
Wherever
light
they're
bodies, your
quantumly
soul within is
entangled.
a plasma being,
That's
and
right.
so it makes a quantum entanglement, and that's how karma is getting carried forward. And people think karma's, oh, that's BS. No, it's real. And Krishna even warned about creating good karma. He said, if you create too much good karma, you might create a quantum entanglement where you have to come back in another
Make
lifetime
up
just
for
to
it.
kind of write the good karma too. So
That's right.
you gotta tiptoe through life, making sure you don't create the too much goody two shoe type karma or too much bad karma, because it's
How
not
many
going away
times have we
until,
seen the really kind, compassionate person just have the worst stuff happen to them? I mean,
yeah.
it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So the soul within is plasma in nature.
yep.
Like if when Shri Yukteswar, this guy in this book, this is how I found all of this, is when I was trying to explain how the soul within is, how it can move around, and how it can retain all this information. He talks about the five aura electricities of the causal body. The
Yeah.
causal body is that soul, the main orb of the soul. And he calls them aura electricities, the plasma. And he
Yeah.
said that we won't be able to measure this plasma, these aura electricities, until next Treta Yuga. So we're like a couple thousand years before our modern science can even measure this stuff. Yet these guys are talking about it, like Krishna and in the Upanishads, and they talked about it to such a level where when I started really reading it, it was like, this is unworldly. Like, how did they know
Yeah.
this stuff to
I
this
don't know,
level?
but I read the same thing, went through the same exact thing.
So
Oh, yeah, they know about the plasma universe and they know all
oh,
about.
I know. It's just it's yeah. So
So,
it's
well, I know they're hanging on to these teachings
yeah,
because Robert Lawler told me he got into someplace in India and he could read Sanskrit and he said that basically everything you're saying. He
yeah,
said these are the deepest teachings that he discovered during his
yeah,
30 years in India.
yeah. So I'll just quickly go through this so people kind of understand how these heavenly bodies are affecting soul consciousness. So in sort of the Vedic Yuga system, there's actual seven bodies, like there's seven chakras, there's seven bodies, but they break it down into three primary ones where they call it your gross physical body, which is your meat suit, your flesh and bones.
Yeah.
And then they have the causal body, which is the soul orb. And then there's the subtle body, which is more like the light body, which is the subtle body takes interfaces to the physical body so that the orb within can make the physical body work. So unless you have an orb that goes into a body, you really don't have life. It's
That's
like
exactly right.
you need both. And I think
Yep.
the cord, even though that orb enters a couple months after conception, the cord is made when that light of when the egg is fertilized, that connection is made, but the actual indwelling soul doesn't come for a couple of months, because you have to have a physical body to do the rest, right? Like
Right.
you need both of them. And and they don't really talk about the cosmic and the nirvanic body very much, because they you have to attain enlightenment. You have to punch through the cosmic body to reach the orb at the top and become enlightened. So that's why most of these practices don't go heavily into the cosmic and the uh, nirvanic bodies. So this orb, and you see them appearing in digital photography all the time now. They're
Very well
plasma.
done
It's a
now.
plasma ball. This is the causal. This is the causal body, basically, without a body. It's not in corporeal form there. And you ever notice that the Buddhist Dharma wheel and the Indian Dharma wheel can be seen inside these things? Like they're showing
Yep.
up. And when you're a filmmaker, you probably know when they used to take a picture of this book, for example, it was just a mirror image on the film. With digital photography, they're pixelating it. And
Yep.
I think these things are like in fourth or fifth dimension vibrating around, and the pixelation process allows us to see them. That's why they're showing up more in digital photography than,
Or because we changed yugas, they're easier to
yeah,
see.
it could be that too. Yeah.
I think that's what it is because I mean, I've actually seen him quite a bit, and it only been in the last 4 or 5 years that I've been seeing him.
Yeah.
And, and I think that, yeah, we're going to start seeing him more and more.
Yeah. So, and so this is, I think, I don't really know where Sri Yukteswar got the information. It's in the Upanishads, and I think the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita is where he got most of his information. But he said there's 5 oral electricities that constitute this causal body, and where they so an atom under the influence of universal knowledge, and this is where the wisdom mind development in Gnosticism is so important. And
Right.
it's not just wisdom of having PhDs and a bunch of learning and being a philosopher. It's the understanding of emptiness. The Jason Kappa was very specific about this. You got to understand the deeper meaning behind emptiness, and that's how all things are interconnected, how nothing is permanent, and that's the whole philosophy behind Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. So you need to and same with Gnosticism. It's beyond wisdom, but when you gain that wisdom mind, every atom in your body forms a calm state. And so there's that. There's the development of wisdom is really important, but the second thing is the development of love, because when it forms love, you get this polarization. You see, this is the orb. It's at the soul seat. It's just below the navel. Your higher self is not in Andromeda. It's in your belly right now. Most people are stuck in their belly. That's where your soul. That's why when you get scared, you cover your soul here. Or when you have your heart broken, you ever notice your foot doesn't hurt, your head doesn't hurt. It hurts right here because it's the soul's weeping. It's at that below that chakra. And that polarity that you see here does not happen until you develop love. So where Krishna said wisdom and love are equal, he's talking about Gnosticism and how you need to have love to get that polarity. That doesn't happen. It's like iron filings. It's described in the Upanishads as it gets polarized like iron filings.
Yep.
So your soul, because I was scared about the hidden teaching part that I was releasing and some bad people might get it or something. And if you don't have a loving heart, you're not going to become enlightened anyway. Like the polarity.
Can't do alchemy unless you know how to have love. So
Yeah,
that's why the alchemist would be being tortured by the king to give up his secret, and he keeps saying, "Dude, I can give you the secret, but you can't do it anyway." It's
yeah.
like, you can't do it.
So the soul is affected by mental formations like love and wisdom, but the subtle body, which is the light body, is affected by the cosmos. So that's where this influence on the soul and on your character and what's going on is why astrology is going to become more and more important and we'll understand it more, is because it really does affect everything on that's going on with
Astrology is the mapping of the plasma fields.
Yeah.
That's
It's
all.
funny. That's exactly what I said in my book. I said it's think of it as they're master quantum entanglement. They're looking at so much quantum entanglement in the heavens, and they've mastered it. Like these ones who can do it right down to they're like that's a skill in itself. It takes a lifetime just to be able to do that alone.
Never known. I've known quite a number of incredibly wealthy, successful businessmen, and every one of them use astrology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because they know like it's yeah, and so Krishna talked about how the physical body is a field and the causal body is the knower of the field. That's why it's very clear that real consciousness is in your belly. It's in your soul. It just the brain is just a microprocessor where it can throw things to solve problems, whatever. But and that's where the problem starts is we all create an identity around what we think our body and our brain is, and we're not connected to the soul, and we're missing it until that actually happens. Um, and the other interesting thing is the soul or the subtle body generates the two primary wind channels, the main Shushanam region, and all the chakras. Those things don't really exist, and the light body provides that interface basically to the physical body.
They're invisible to us.
So it's got to go to the top, and it has to flip to come to the top, and that's another teaching. That's the hidden teaching that was hidden, but why I talk about eclipses so much when you read the book, you'll realize that the wind channels are male and female. So the Ida and the Pingala are male and female polarity wise, right? And only during an eclipse, because the sun and moon are male and female as well. As well.
Yeah.
So when eclipse happens, they cancel out each other, but they also cancel out the Shushanam region or the wind channels where it's a more optimal time for enlightenment. And that was the hidden teaching part that we missed. So if you know the right technique and you do it at the right timing, you take decades or lifetimes off attaining full consciousness.
I'm gonna have to go pretty soon, but do you know the story about the astronomer in France? He was in the basement. He was working on one of the gravity pendulums,
Yeah.
right? And he noticed that the pendulum suddenly started moving funny, and he marked down the time. Right, it was just like for 1 second, right? But he marked it all down. Then he went home. He went up to go to lunch, and he was eating lunch, and somebody came up to him and said, "So did you watch the total eclipse?" And he said, "Oh, I forgot all about it." They said, "Oh yeah," and then he realized that it happened exactly at that time.
Yeah.
That's when
Yeah.
the pendulum started moving oddly. So you're right.
And that's why Göbekli Tepe, Stonehenge, all the megaliths can predict eclipses with high accuracy.
Yep.
The ancients knew this. They knew all of it. They knew all of it, and we just lost it.
Yep.
So when you have the sun and the moon in perfect alignment during an eclipse, it opens up these the two wind channels. So it doesn't guarantee enlightenment's going to occur, but if you're doing the right techniques at this time,
that's right.
so that's why love and wisdom are equal, where Krishna said, but in my book, I said timing and technique are also as equal. So you master all four of those, and your path to higher consciousness is going to be shortened by a long ways.
Yep.
And the Kalachakra Tantra is another document. We only have 25% of it. So 75%, the Kalachakra Mula Tantra has disappeared, and it has all of the mathematics for predicting eclipses to infinity. How did they have that in the time of Buddha? This was that separate teaching that Buddha gave to the first king of Shambhala, and who is Sachandra. And the last Kalki king is named Ruda Chakran, but that's the same as the Kalki, the guy you made a movie. It's the same guy. It's the Kalki kings, and they're the same guys. Like, and in Tibet they call them Rijjin kings. And there's a 25 king countdown, and they say each one rules for 100 years. So Buddha was 2,500 years ago. So we're at the time in the Buddha eschatology as well that it's soon. So this Kalachakra astronomy is the same thing. They carefully track those nodal points above the moon and below the moon, basically for predicting eclipses. They knew this. And the higher tantric teachings were only done during total lunar eclipses. I found this in the fragments of the Kalachakra Tantra. Like, so they knew it. I know this part. I'm like 100% certain that it's correct. And Vedic astrology is the same thing, as where they divided it into 12 equal pies, but they're not equal. They actually stop when the constellation competes. They just show it as pies, but it's based on the actual length of each one of those. They also have these 27 nakshatras, but there was a 28th one that was hidden, and it was hidden in the time of Krishna, and it was time of worship. And it's the only one where the polarity changes, because all of the other ones are feminine, because the moon's feminine. And we have one that goes to a masculine, and that happens during the eclipse. So they knew this in the time of Krishna, but he was going into the dark age, and he hid it as well. Krishna actually hid the 28th nakshatra. So like, it's like Buddhism, like with the Kalachakra Tantra. They knew it, but they just didn't release it back then because it wasn't time.
Right.
Just wasn't time. So there's a Canadian physicist, I think he was a physicist, Albert Roy Davies, that actually put people under positive and negative magnetic fields. And when we're under a positive one, our actions were negative, and when we're under a negative one, so magnetics affects consciousness, but and moods and everything. Like, there is an interconnection with this. So I think that we're going to see a lot more astrology used. Yep. So most of these megalithic sites, this Vedic sidereal zodiac, can be placed right over top of Stonehenge, right over top of Omak, and all of these sites. It works in all of them. And the interesting one is this one here, Jay, is the one in Alberta. This is called Omak. And it's a medicine wheel. And like I know a lot of natives get mad because medicine wheels were to celebrate great chiefs or a great hunt or something like that. Interesting one about this one though is it's right on 51 degrees latitude, and that's the same latitude Stonehenge is on, and that's the only latitude you got to be within a half a degree where you get the midsummer moonrise and sunset exactly, so you can predict the equinox exactly at 90 degrees. You got to be right on 51 degrees latitude, and the outer ring is the exact same size as Stonehenge's, and it's a 5,000. It was built in 3100 BC, right at the time of the start of the Mayan calendar. So we have a 5,125 year Mayan calendar, and we have this one in Alberta again with the natives. It's a 5,000 plus or I talked to the researcher. He said plus or minus 200 years, and they were actually counting this calendar down from 3,100 BC, and they stopped using it about the time the white man came onto the
Did the
prairies.
Mayans come from there? I'm pretty sure that the Mayans came from Canada. They went south.
Potentially at one time because they, like the migration path from
Yeah.
Asia over the top went right through where this site is at. So
Pretty sure archaeologists say that.
yeah, but the interesting thing is again, it has 28 rays radiating out to represent the lunar months. And you could literally move rocks around this site to determine when eclipses were going to happen as well. So it's a calendar, it predicts eclipses, it predicts equinoxes, everything can be done. And it wasn't put there so they knew when to plant their crops. And it's over 5,000 years old. So I think some medicine wheels later became more of a symbolic meaning, but they probably date back to this one because this one's quite old, right? Like 5,000 years is a fairly old device.
Yeah.
So and they're finding them all over Britain and Scotland and I said in a podcast about 5 years ago, start looking at 51 degrees latitude and they'll find more. And they found the Superhenge close to Stonehenge but it's all buried. It's much bigger, but it's older, they think, but it's the same right at that 51 degrees latitude. And then in Tiel, Netherlands, they found a wooden Stonehenge right on 51 degrees latitude just 2 years ago. Like, so we're going to probably find more of these. So they can predict eclipses and equinoxes. Some people are trying to say this was just made in the 50s, but the Aubrey did research in 1600s and wrote a book on it and mapped the holes. So like they had some cranes trying to fix the thing, and then you know how they try to dumb down things. Like I think that's partly by design too. They're trying to make it so we don't figure out what these sites are really for. And apparently Göbekli Tepe is really tight. Like you can't even go to that site, and
Yeah.
it's crazy. So how they predicted eclipses in Stonehenge is they had these Aubrey holes, and there's 56 of them, and if it's twice as many as 28, and the reason why is you get more fidelity. If you have twice as many holes, you get more fidelity. And what they did is they had pigs, and they would move the pig every 2 places for the moon every day, and every 13 days they'd move it 2 places for the sun. And you basically can tell when an eclipse is happening roughly with these devices. It wasn't 100% accurate, like Dawkins said it was, or Hawkins said it was very accurate, but they later found out with supercomputers that it wasn't 100%. But when you watch the stars all the time, it doesn't have to be 100. They just have to know approximately a week or two before they're coming so they can prepare spiritually. So they tire themselves out, they do their practice. So these sites were pretty amazing. They're spiritual sites, I believe. I think all of these sites are like holy spiritual site. Like in the Kalachakra Tantra, eclipses are seen as holy days. They actually view an eclipse as a holy day in the Kalachakra Tantra. And so when a lunar eclipse happens, it's just the peg holes will be on the other side. So these people using this site know when that's going to happen, and they can do meditations or do the Kriya Yoga and do the right technique at the right time. That's what these sites are all for. It was about doing the right technique at the right time. And if you notice, Göbekli Tepe is much more carved, but you see that little notch on the top? I think they were doing kind of like what they're doing in Stonehenge with those outer, but they're doing shadows onto inner stones to predict where the equinox and when eclipses are going to happen. It's a more advanced site. And this is in the height of our last golden age, and they buried, look how they buried it. Like, this was buried very carefully. Like, there was a reason that they did this. I think, again, this is another spiritual site, and they're finding more of them around. I think it was probably they were teaching high priestess stuff 13,000 years ago, and that's where all the druid stuff, all of these Stonehenge, they're just like you said, as we fell, it just got more cruder, but they were used for the same purpose.
Yep, I agree with you completely.
And this one in Alberta, you can actually see the rays radiating out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a 5,000 year calendar. So why I think 2024 might be the closer date is we have two calendars in North America that were brought. There's actually a Indian story where a guy by the name of Hognan came from India a long time ago to North America, and that's why we have Rama and Sita festivals in Mexico. Like, why are, Rama was 7,000 years ago. Why are they having Rama and Sita? They found figurines of Ganesh in Central America.
Oh, yeah.
This group obviously whoever these people were, came here and gave the people a lot of this information.
Definitely.
And they probably picked the Plains Indians because they lived with the land, they were in nature, they're probably very spiritual people. They left this with people for a reason. And so we have a Mayan calendar that's 5,125 to 126 years, and we got this one that's 5,000 plus or minus 200 years. So, and they're both started in 31 BC. So why did the Mayans civilization didn't start till 400 to 600 AD? Why do they have a calendar that goes all the way back to 3000 BC, 3100 BC? And so I thought, what is the biggest event that happened in the world in 3100 BC? The passing of Krishna. He died in 3102. That's when he left the planet. It was 3102 BC. So I thought maybe they're monitoring a cycle of Vishnu. These calendars are because if you look at the Mayan, they say it's the return of Bolan Yokteku, a sky god that comes from the sky. If you look at the Hopi, they have Pahana, a white-skinned god that comes from the sky. And this site doesn't really have a story behind it, but it's measuring the exact same kind of time frames. And so if you take the Mayan calendar and you use, because it starts in 3114 BC, change the date to 3102 BC, you end up at 2024. I think they're monitoring a cycle of Vishnu. So I think that we don't just come out of Dwarpa Yuga right now. It's also, like you said, potentially a return of the Kalki. It might happen 40, 100 years down the road, but we're at that time now that I think they were monitoring a cycle of Vishnu. I could be wrong. I don't know this for 100%, but why are they both monitoring 5,000 years? And it's, I think that it helps sharpen that calendar of the 24,000 year cycle where we can kind of figure it out. I think, and that's why I think the time is now. I think we're at that time.
Well, Kalki needed to have fully integrated internet in order for it to happen. And then what it will happen is that he is the final break between the Kali Yuga and all the other yugas. This is it, we're done, right? And it's just going to end. It's going to be somebody, it's going to be a man, and he's going to say it. He's just going to say it. Like, I can't say it. I don't have enough, people following me. It's going to be somebody big, and he's just start laying it all out. And who knows, maybe he's watching this show right now.
It's possible. Yeah. Or it could just be being born now, because when that
being born now,
revelation sign.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's probably he's just being born now, because this battle has a long way to go.
Yeah.
And
that revelation sign where the Jupiter went into the belly of Virgo in 2017? Like maybe somebody important was actually born at that time, and he's just a kid now or something.
Yeah, and he'll be 30 years old in 2047, which would be just right just about the
Yeah.
perfect time for Kalki to rise up and straighten everything out.
And there's another interesting thing in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I can't believe I remember this. It's 1.3.25. You probably read this when you did the film. It says, at the conjunction of the yugas, we're at the he'll take birth in the home of Vishnu Yasa, which is his father.
Yeah.
And the last part is the killer. It says, at that time, the world rulers will be degenerated into plunderers.
Yes.
Like that's now. We don't have to wait. You know, you see what's going on in Canada with our government. They're degenerated into plunderers right now. We do
Oh,
not have to wait 400,000 years for that to happen. I believe it's happening right now.
it is
It's,
happening.
yeah,
We're there, and yeah, pretty exciting times.
yeah. So
All right.
that's where I came up with I could be wrong, but I kind of think I'm right. I think that something big is going to happen in the next 10 years. What happened from 1700 to now, we're going to see double that in the next 10 years. This is my guess. Like this is just me kind of trying to guess it, but that's my
What's
guess.
going to start happening is uh, a year will start happening in a day, a decade will start happening in a year. That's going to be like that kind of thing. And it's going to be
Yeah.
so mind-blowing and breathtaking that everybody should learn how to meditate so that you're in a good space when this stuff really gets chaotic.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, Sheldon, I got to get going here.
Okay.
But it was really good. I mean, I really wanted somebody to come on and explain all this, because it's just so important. And connecting eclipses with megalithic sites, with, you know, plasma physics and quantum mechanics and ancient Vedic teachings. It was like, wow,
Yeah, I knew that you would like this stuff.
this is
You're
definitely.
covered all the time on your show, but it's
I'll have you back. We'll talk. I'm going to read your book, and I'll have you back. We'll talk about hidden teachings and all that.
yeah. I
Yeah,
think that'll blow you away actually when you really see how it's just right there in front of our face. Like that's what blew me away. And I know that for when you get to that point, like I'd put a 70% that I'm right about this calendar. When you get to the hidden teachings, I'll put 100% on it. Like my whole life, work, my whole being, I know for a fact that part is correct. And it's in several, it's in Buddhist, it's in Vedic. It was known. It was all known, and all of these sites that you see, like they're all 7,000 to 8,000 years old. They're all those are all spiritual sites. Like we knew this a long time ago, and they were built kind of in Treta Yuga after we were on the downward spiral after the perihelion, at the height of the golden age, and I think that's what all these sites really are about.
well, it was a
And
very clear explanation for the system that I believe in, and that my research, and not something I believe in, but my own research into the cross of Henday reveals exactly what you're saying,
yeah,
and in every way, in shape and form. And we have to understand that we're part of this. 99% of the universe is plasma. 1% is what
yeah,
we study in physics. So we don't even really understand the other 99% of the universe because we really haven't looked at it. And
yeah,
it's key to this whole thing. It's the
yeah,
underlying foundation of the spiritual belief, which is really a physical belief too. So.
yeah.
Well, it was great having you on, Sheldon. I will definitely link to your book. Is it on Amazon?
Yeah, they're both on Amazon.
Yeah, I'll definitely link to that. And if you have a website or anything, send that to me. I didn't know if you have one or not.
Yeah, I don't have a website. I'm kind of laid back. I just hardly ever do these as well. I just I believe that it'll find its own wings when the timing is right. Like when I first came out in 2009, I knew it was too soon.
Well,
Everybody was gearing up for,
you'd be really surprised by who watches my show. You really
yeah,
would. And I'm surprised by who watches my show. And so everybody out there, it passes on because this information has got to get out. It's super important.
yeah,
And
eh,
I think it's a clear explanation for how the whole system works. And it
yeah,
comes from probably one of the oldest cultures on Earth. if, extant cultures that we still have writings from. And, and I think it's correct. I mean, and the thing is that I like about it is that the secret teachings of alchemy agree with this. Pretty
Yeah.
much that this is what they teach, but it's so obscure in their writings that you would have to be a scholar in a number of different areas in order to understand what the alchemy books are telling. But they're telling you this right here, what you
Yeah.
just said. That's what they're telling you. All right,
Yeah.
man, I'm going to run out of time here, so I'm going to have to go. I will definitely have you on again. I really want to thank you.
Yeah,
Incredible
thank you.
teaching, and I'm sure it's going to have a large effect on things.
Yeah, I hope so. We're at the time now. So
Yep, we're at the time now. All right, man. Hey, I'm Jay Weidner. You've been watching Reality Check. I really appreciate it. I know that a lot of you are going to get a lot out of this, and it's a teaching I've been wanting to bring for a long time, and it's finally here, and it's appropriate. This is late 2024. So
yeah.
good. All right. See you, everybody.
See ya.